Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first webinar of the Kalpavish webinar series on implementation of Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and its implementation in India. So this panel discussion aims at bringing to forefront the need for a human rights-based approach for implementation of the Global Biodiversity Framework, especially as given in Global Target 21, Global Target 22 and 23. To explain, Global Target 21, which requires access of traditional knowledge, innovations, practices, and technologies of indigenous peoples and local community only with their free, prior, informed consent. Target 21 requires participation of indigenous peoples and local communities, girls and women, children and youth, persons with disabilities in all aspects of biodiversity governance. Target 23 specifically requires gender equality. This webinar will focus on Target 13 and Target 19 of the Global Biodiversity Targets under the GBF, along with Target 21, 22, and 23 that we just mentioned. The discussion will highlight Target 13, which requires enhancing fair and equitable benefit sharing of biodiversity and associated traditional knowledge. We will also discuss Target 19, which is on mobilizing funds for biodiversity conservation from all possible sources. But we will focus on Target 19D that talks about stimulating funds from innovative schemes and market-based mechanisms such as benefit sharing with environmental and social safeguards. This discussion will also focus on Target 19F, which requires enhancement of collective actions and community-based natural resource management. We have with us today 5 eminent speakers who will share their views on this particular topic. The first speaker is Mr. Virendra Tiwari, retired IFS officer, who is the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority. Our second speaker is Kumari Tai, who is an Adivasi leader associated with Aamhi, Aamchya, Aarogya, Saathi, Korchi, Maharashtra. The third speaker is Ms. Shalini Bhutani, a senior law and policy analyst based in Delhi. Our fourth speaker is Dr. Naveen Namboothiri, founder trustee of Dakshin Foundation, a non-governmental organization working on coastal, marine, and mountain ecosystems in India. Our fifth speaker is Ms. Kavita Mehta, the executive director of Sahjeevan, a trust whose activities support pastoral communities through livelihood development and biodiversity conservation. I welcome all the panelists to the webinar. I also welcome all the participants to this webinar. Before we start, we've already discussed that, but just a few information I'll repeat. We have the option to listen to Marathi translation. For those who need and prefer, you can click on the interpretation icon and choose French, which will take you to Marathi translation. We also have information notes on global biodiversity targets and various biodiversity funds. We've put that in the chat box. We will have all the panelists speak on the specific topics first, and then in the last half an hour, we will have for a general discussion. We will take question and answers from the participants. So please put your questions into the chat box and also mention if you want a response from a particular panelist. I will ask the questions to the panelist. Without much delay, I will start the panel discussion. Sir, first I invite
अल्फान्सो किंवा इतर पॅनलिस्ट हे त्याचे उत्तर देतील.
Officer, who is currently the chairperson of the National Biodiversity Authority. We would be delighted if you can speak on how the National Biodiversity Funds can be administered fairly and equitably with and for the indigenous peoples and local communities. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Namaskar and good morning to all. Uh, uh, First of all, I would like to inform that most of you are aware that we have a three-tier system of biodiversity framework institutional governance mechanism. So at national level, we have National Biodiversity Authority. At state level, we have State Biodiversity Board, and at Panchayat level, we have biodiversity management committees. And all these
राज्य
three
स्तरावरती राज्य
come
जैवविविधता
together,
मंडळ आहे आणि
and
स्थानिक
they are responsible for the biodiversity governance. And the important factors are, as already mentioned, is one is prior informed consent, the other is the mutually agreed terms, and the third one is the fair and equitable sharing of benefits. In India, we have about 276,000 biodiversity management committees. They are the primary institutions which represent the community. The important role of the biodiversity management committee is the people's biodiversity register, preparation of people's biodiversity register, promoting biodiversity conservation and sustainable use, and also providing consent for access to biological resources. So as most of you are aware that Section 27 of the Biological Diversity Act, uh, they, this governs to how the National Biodiversity Fund is managed. So Section 27(2) talks about how the fund can be utilized. The one is the channeling the benefit to the benefit claimers. The other one is for conservation, promotion, and sustainable use of biological resources. And another important provision is for socio-economic development of the area from where such biological resources are accessed or from where the traditional knowledge associated with have been accessed. Now, one of the important, as you already mentioned, that it covers target 13, target 21, target 22, and target 23 of National Biodiversity Strategy and Action Plan of our country. Uh, so far, India has collected about 266 crore uh, is the amount which we have collected for from excess benefit sharing. Out of that, we have disbursed about 145 crore so far to various state biodiversity boards, uh, to biodiversity management committees, to farmers, and to the communities. So far, we have about 10,000 plus biodiversity management committees and more than 300 farmers across 23 states and 4 union territories have got the benefit from ABS mechanism. I would like to give some example for the benefit of everyone.
लाभार्थ समन्वय वाटप
And since
या तत्वाचा अवलंब करून हे वाटप केलेलं आहे.
किया था और they paid about 5.47 crore to नेशनल बायोडायवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी। और जो हमने वहां पे उस तहसील में 84 बायोडायवर्सिटी मैनेजमेंट कमेटी हैं, तो इस जो रकम मिली थी, इसे हमने 84 गांव में ऑन एन एवरेज ऑफ 5.5 lakhs पर बीएमसी डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किया है। एक और उदाहरण मैं देना चाहूंगा, छिंदवाड़ा जिला है मध्य प्रदेश में, जहां पे वहां एक मेडिसिनल प्लांट को किसी कंपनी ने एक्सेस किया था, जो डेंगू के दवाई बनाने में काम आता है। और कंपनी ने नेशनल बायोडायवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी को 4.5 लाख रुपए अपफ्रंट पेमेंट किया था, जो हम लोगों ने वहां पे मध्य प्रदेश माइनर फॉरेस्ट प्रोड्यूस कॉरपोरेशन फेडरेशन है, उसे ट्रांसफर किया, जो कि उस एरिया के बायोडायवर्सिटी कंजर्वेशन और कम्युनिटी डेवलपमेंट के में यूटिलाइज किया गया। इसके अलावा एक और उदाहरण है, जो H9N2 एवियन इन्फ्लुएंजा वैक्सीन टेक्नोलॉजी जो ICAR NIHSD ने डेवलप किया था, उस सिलसिले में करीब 75,000 रुपए NBA को ट्रांसफर किया गया था, जो हम लोगों ने कम्युनिटी को ट्रांसफर किया है। इसके अलावा एक और उदाहरण है, जहां जो जैसे पेटेंट कोई भी इंस्टीट्यूशन या रिसर्च के लिए जब किसी भी बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्सेस को एक्सेस किया जाता है और उससे पेटेंट के लिए अगर कोई अप्लाई करता है, तो उससे पहले NBA के में रजिस्टर करना पड़ता है। इस रजिस्ट्रेशन मैकेनिज्म के थ्रू करीब 43 लाख रुपए NBA को मिले, जो हम लोगों ने 16 स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड और उसके थ्रू BMCs को ट्रांसफर किए हैं। पर इसमें जो कुछ अड़चन भी आती है, जो मैं बताना चाहूंगा। एक तो है कि जो कम्युनिटी शुड बी इन्वॉल्व्ड एंड दे शुड नो कि उनके एरिया से या उनके पंचायत या उनके जुरिस्डिक्शन से कौन सा बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्स एक्सेस किया जा रहा है। So we at sitting in Chennai or State Biodiversity Board sitting in the state headquarters, उनके पास ये जानकारी तब तक नहीं रहेगी जब तक कोई कंपनी या इंस्टीट्यूशन अप्लाई नहीं करेगा। पर BMCs को विजिलेंट होना पड़ेगा और उन्हें ये जानकारी रखनी पड़ेगी कि उनके एरिया में कौन से बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्सेस पाए जाते हैं और जिसका कंपनीज के कमर्शियल यूज करती है। तो जब तक ये जानकारी नहीं होगी, तब तक ये जो बेनिफिट है जो वो उन तक पहुंच नहीं पाएगा। एक और चीज जो हम लोगों को दिक्कत हो रही है कि जो कंपनीज अप्लाई करती है, तो वो कई बार जो कंपनीज है वो डायरेक्ट फार्मर से या डायरेक्ट कम्युनिटी से कोई चीज बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्सेस नहीं एक्सेस कर रही है, वो ट्रेडर या इंटरमीडियरी के थ्रू एक्सेस कर रही है। तो हमारे पास जब वो बेनिफिट शेयरिंग को डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करने की बात आती है, तो हमारे पास ये जानकारी नहीं होती है कि उसका असली बेनिफिट क्लेमर है कौन। तो ये बहुत बड़ी समस्या हम लोग फेस कर रहे हैं। और जो ट्रेडर को तो हम बेनिफिट नहीं दे सकते, क्योंकि ट्रेडर तो ऑलरेडी प्रॉफिट कमा रहा है। तो ऐसे केसेस में हम लोग ये जो पैसा है वो स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड को ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं, और स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड के थ्रू वो जो मैंने बताया कि वो सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट के लिए काम आ सकता है। एक अभी मैं उदाहरण देना चाहूंगा कि जैसे इंडस्ट्री ने कॉटन सीड्स एक्सेस किया, पर वो ये नहीं बता पा रहे हैं कि ये कॉटन सीड्स वो कहाँ से एक्सेस किया उन्होंने। तो ऐसे केस में हम लोग अब वो करीब हमें 7.5 करोड़ रुपए मिले जो कंपनीज ने दिए, पर अब हम वो किसे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करें, क्योंकि हमारे पास कोई डिटेल नहीं है। तो ऐसे केस में हम क्या कर रहे हैं कि पूरे अपनी कंट्री में कहाँ कॉटन कितने प्रमाण में, कितने एरिया पे कॉटन की खेती होती है, उस प्रपोर्शन में हम उस पैसे को डिवाइड करके, करीब 10 या 11 राज्य ऐसे हैं जहां पे कॉटन की खेती होती है, तो उन राज्य के स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड को हम ये पैसे ट्रांसफर कर रहे हैं। और फिर ये पैसे को मतलब उस राज्य के सारी बीएमसीज के स्ट्रेंथनिंग के लिए, कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग के लिए, या वहाँ के सोशियो इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट के लिए यूज किया जा सकता है। दूसरा है कि चीजों को डिजिटाइज करने की जरूरत है। जो हम लोगों ने पीबीआर बनाया है वो आज ज्यादातर फिजिकल फॉर्म में है, और ये फिजिकल फॉर्म को हम चाह रहे हैं कि इसे इलेक्ट्रॉनिक फॉर्म में अगर कन्वर्ट किया जाता है, जैसे कि जो नया एक्ट में अमेंडमेंट हुआ है, तो उसमें एक सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ ओरिजिन का प्रोविजन किया गया है। कंपनीज डायरेक्टली, जो नेशनल बायोडायवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी एक एंड टू एंड पोर्टल बना रहा है, उस पोर्टल के माध्यम से कंपनीज डायरेक्टली अप्लाई करती है, और ये एप्लीकेशन डायरेक्टली बीएमसीज, जो बीएमसीज ने वहां पे पाए जाने वाले बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्सेस को ई पोर्टल में इंफॉर्मेशन उसके बारे में भरी है, तो कंपनीज डायरेक्टली एप्लीकेशन करते हैं और वो सर्टिफिकेट ऑफ ओरिजिन ऑटोमेटिकली जनरेट होता है, और वो एप्लीकेशन फी जो है वो डायरेक्टली बीएमसीज को जाती है। तो हम लोग अभी एक जीआईजेड के हेल्प से 14 राज्यों में ये जो पीबीआर बना हुआ है उसको डिजिटाइज करने का एक प्रोजेक्ट करने जा रहे हैं, जो आगे के 1-1.5 साल में ये सारे इंफॉर्मेशन डिजिटाइज हो जाएंगे। और मेरी रिक्वेस्ट सारी बीएमसी से रहेगी कि आप ये जानकारी जो है वो स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड के थ्रू पोर्टल में भरें, और ताकि डायरेक्टली ये बीएमसी जो हैं वो कंपनीज या जो बायोलॉजिकल रिसोर्सेस ले रहे हैं उनसे कनेक्ट हो सके। दूसरा है कि आज की तारीख में हम ये जो एबीएस कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं वो ट्रांसफर भी हम स्टेट बायोडायवर्सिटी बोर्ड के थ्रू कर रहे हैं बीएमसी को, क्योंकि हमारे पास सारे बीएमसी के अकाउंट नंबर नहीं है। तो भविष्य में ये पोर्टल जब पूरी तरीके से अगले 6 महीने में डेवलप हो जाएगा, तो ये जो पैसे हैं वो नेशनल बायोडायवर्सिटी अथॉरिटी से डायरेक्ट बीएमसी को ट्रांसफर हो जाएंगे। तो इसमें मेरे ख्याल से सभी की, एनजीओस की भी बड़ी भूमिका होगी, और हम लोग कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि नेशनल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ रूरल डेवलपमेंट एंड पंचायती राज, जो भारत सरकार का एक इंस्टीट्यूट है हैदराबाद में, जिसके हर स्टेट में भी उसके स्टेट इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं, उसके थ्रू बीएमसी की कैपेसिटी बिल्ड करें, और उन्हें अपने रिसोर्सेस को कैसे मैनेज करना है इस बारे में ज्यादा से ज्यादा जानकारी दी जा सके। और इसके अलावा जो नए अमेंडमेंट हुए हैं 2023 में, जो नए अमेंडमेंट हुए हैं 2024 में, जो नया रूल बना है, और साथ ही साथ जो 2025 में एक्सेस बेनिफिट शेयरिंग का रेगुलेशन बना है, इसके बारे में कम्युनिटीज में ज्यादा से ज्यादा जानकारी दी जा सके। और मैं चाहूंगा कि इस पैनल के बाकी मेंबर्स भी अपने विचार प्रस्तुत करें, और ये मतलब कम्युनिटी तक हम सब मिलकर ज्यादा से ज्यादा ये जो बेनिफिट है पहुंचा सके, ऐसी मैं अपेक्षा करता हूँ। थैंक यू।
Thank you so much, sir. And it was really good to listen to you. And we are very happy to share that we have a couple of the panelists speaking on community management of biodiversity. We have Ms. Kavita, who has worked with both community management, Community Forest Management Committee, and also the Biodiversity Management Committee, who will share her experience during her session. Next, we have Kumari Tai, who is an Adivasi leader, and she will share with us the learnings that they have from the management of community forest resources. And you will be delighted to know that there is also like the information they are keeping, how they're keeping, and so I'll ask Kumari Tai to come to present her learnings from the management of resources.
हाँ
कुमारी ताई, आप
हाँ
आपका सामुदायिक वन संरक्षण क्षेत्रों से जो भी फंड्स मिलता है, जो भी मैनेजमेंट है, वो समुदाय के फलाई के लिए और समुदाय प्रगति और जैव वैविध्य का संरक्षण के लिए और उसका सुस्थिर उपयोग के लिए कैसे आप करते हैं, जिसके मैटर में आप हमको कुछ ध्यान देगा?
हाँ जी।
We also have a presentation from her. I'll just share that.
तो अनुसूचित जमाती आणि इतर पारंपरिक वन निवासी वन हक्क का मान्य करणे हे जे कायदा जो आहे उस कायदा चे तहात जे काही आपल्याला जे तरतूद विशेष तरतुदी जे दिलेले आहे शासनाने की वन हक्का च्या बाबतीतले जे जसे की कलम 3(1) हा जो अनुसार जो पहिले से भी हम संस्थामध्ये जे वापरले जाणारे आणि कोणती नावाने म्हणजे ओळखले जाणारे असे निस्तार सारखा जे आहे की काड्या असाल, फाटे असाल, निस्तार असाल, गौणवन उपज असाल, ते जे परंपरा अनुसार जे आपण संकलन करत होतो ते पद्धती आजही वन हक्क कायद्याने आपल्याला दिलेली आहे. आणि दुसरा जे आहे की कलम 3(1) अनुसार गावाच्या सीमा अंतर्गत आणि सीमेचे बाहेरून सुद्धा आपल्याला पारंपरिक नीतीनं गोळा आपल्याला करता येते. आणि त्याच्या गोळाच नाही तर संकलन आणि विक्री व्यवस्थापन करण्याच्या स्वामित्व हक्क जे वन हक्क कायद्याने दिलेले आहे. याच्यामध्ये जे आहे की सामूहिक वन हक्क मिळाले नंतरचे जे ग्रामसभाचे अधिकार काय आहे, तर याच्यामध्ये जसे की कलम 3(1) अनुसार जे आहे पाण्यामधील राहणारे जे मासे असाल, खेकडा असाल, कासव असाल, तिथे अजून उत्पादन करणारे जसे की सिंघाडा, कांदा वगैरे जे आहेत, असे जे काही आपल्याला उत्पादन देणारे असे मोसमी उत्पादन देणारे असे आपल्याला व्यवसाय त्या याच्यामध्ये करता येते. दुसरं जे आहे की कलम 3(10) अनुसार जे काही आदिम जाती जे आहे तिथे, तर याच्यामध्ये कृतीपूर्व जे काही त्यांच्या नियमांच्या जे हक्क जे आहे
कुमारी ताई, आई एम सॉरी टू इंटरवीन. कुमारी ताई, आप हिंदी में बोल सकती हो?
थोड़ा मराठी यानी हिंदी ट्रांसलेट में थोड़ा नहीं का ये होगा इसलिए मैं थोड़ा सा ठीक है, मैं प्रयत्न करती. तीसरा जो है कलम 3(1) झा अनुसार जे काही निरंतर जे हमेशा हम जो वापर करते हैं पारंपरिक रीति से, तो हम जंगल का संरक्षण और संवर्धन का भी जो जिम्मेदारी जो है वन हक्क कायदा ने ग्राम सभा को जो दिया है, उसका जो व्यवस्थापन जो जंगल है उसका व्यवस्थापन करना है, देखरेख करना है, पुनर्निर्माण करना है और उसका जतन भी करना है, तभी हमारे आने वाले अगले पीढ़ी के लिए वो जंगल बच के रहेगा. अब हम देखते हैं कि कायदा में कायदा के प्रकरण 3 में 5 अनुसार जे कहीं हमारे जो कर्तव्य है ग्राम सभा की, हमें क्या करना चाहिए ग्राम सभा का, तो यहाँ जो वन का क्षेत्र जो है वहाँ के सभी प्रकार के वन जीवन भी है, जहाँ पर हम जंगल में सिर्फ मानव ही अवलंबून तो नहीं है, वहाँ रहने वाले पशु है, पक्षी है, प्राणी है, विविधता है वहाँ, तो उसका भी संरक्षण करना है. उनके लिए भी खान पान के लिए कुछ गौण उपज है, फल है, फूल है, पानी की व्यवस्था है, ये बचाना है ताकि हम हमारे ही लिए ही न सोचते हुए. दूसरा जो है कि अपने जो क्षेत्र के आजू बाजू में जो भी पाणलोट क्षेत्र है वहां से हमारा जल स्रोत और पर्यावरण की समतोल रखने के लिए भी हमें समाज को सोचना है कि जंगल अच्छा रहेगा तो हमें शुद्ध हवा मिलेगा, शुद्ध पानी मिलेगा, और जंगल भी अच्छा रहेगा तो हमारी शाश्वत भी आरोग्य भी अच्छा रहेगा, तो वो देखना है. वन निवासी जो पारंपरिक जो है उनका अधिवास और निवास का जो परिसर है, यहाँ पर किसी भी प्रकार से जो भी है हाँ, आदिवासी समुदाय की जो संस्कृति है, परंपरा है, नैसर्गिक और पारंपरिक जो उनका जो अधिकार है, रीति रिवाज है उनको भी हमें टिका कर रखना है, क्योंकि आदिवासी निसर्ग पूजक है। हमेशा वो जंगल में जाएंगे झाड़ के लिए, फल के लिए, फूल के लिए, तो वो पहले वो उन चीज का पूजा करते हैं, उसी के बाद में भी वो जितना हम वापर सकते हैं उतना वो वहां से ला सकता है। जंगल में रहने वाला जो भी वन प्राणी है, पक्षी है, उनका भी जैव विविधता जो रजिस्टर अभी भैया ने जो बताया, तो हर गांव में उसका रजिस्टर जो तैयार करने का जो काम चालू है, कि जहां हमारे 10 साल पहले हमारे जंगल की स्थिति कैसे थी और आज कैसे है, वहां नया प्राणी आए हैं क्या, नया पशु आए हैं क्या, नया झाड़ लगाए हैं क्या, तो ये सारी चीज का नोन भी आज ग्राम सभा की में जैव विविधता जो समिति है वो ये रजिस्टर नोन करने का जो काम कर रहे हैं। और ग्राम सभा की जी है, ग्राम सभा एक ऐसे यंत्रणा है जो सभी के ऊपर नियंत्रण जो रखता है। और ग्राम सभा के अंदर में सबसे पहले तो हम वन हक्क समिति बनाए। वन हक्क समिति ने सामूहिक और व्यक्तिगत दावा के लिए जो काम किया है, उसके बाद में जो आता है सामूहिक वन हक्क का व्यवस्थापन जो समिति है, जिसे हम CFRMC बोलते हैं। तो CFRMC जो है, जो रोजगार हमी योजना का जो अमल वजौनी का जो काम देख रहे हैं कि गांव में कौन कौन से काम CFR क्षेत्र में होना चाहिए, कहाँ होना चाहिए, उसका एस्टीमेट कैसे बनाना है, उसका लेबर बजट कैसे बनाना है, मस्टोर कैसे बनाना है, तो ये सारी चीज। और वहाँ CFRMC समिति के तहत में अभी गांव में नर्सरी भी तैयार कर रहे हैं कि कौन से झाड़ हमें हमारे CFR क्षेत्र में लगाना है। तो बाम्बू है, मुहा है, जामुन है, ऐसे जो उत्पादन देने वाला जो झाड़ है उसके खुद ही नर्सरी तैयार करके वो लोग अभी गांव के CFR क्षेत्र में यानी प्लांटेशन लगा रहे हैं। जैव विविधता जो समिति है गांव में, वो भी जो जंगल में जाते हैं, निरीक्षण करते हैं वो लोग की जो भी झाड़ था 10 साल या 20 साल पहले, वहां से कुछ कम हो गया है क्या, पक्षी है, प्राणी है, जीव जंतु है, वो कितने प्रमाण में है। और यहाँ जैव विविधता में और अलग अलग भी चीज है, उनका जो बौद्धिक ज्ञान की जो एक लिखान कहीं तो भी आना चाहिए। यहाँ रोहियो समिति भी गठित हुआ है हमारे यहाँ की। जो जिस ग्राम सभा को वन हक का प्राप्त हुआ है, उस ग्राम सभा को 30 नवंबर 2021 के GR के अनुसार रोजगार हमी योजना का अमल वजौनी यंत्रणा भी घोषित किया है। उस तहत यानी ग्राम सभा जो है अच्छे से यानी रोजगार हमी योजना का अमल वजौनी भी कर रहा है। तो यहाँ एक ग्राम सभा अच्छी तरह से अगर चलना है तो ग्राम सभा की नियमावली होना एक जरूरी है। हर ग्राम सभा का नियम रहा तो उस नियम के आधार से ग्राम सभा सामने वो अच्छे अच्छे काम कर सकते हैं। दूसरा जो है कि अपन जो बोल रहे थे संवर्धन व्यवस्था वाला, तो जंगल से चोरी ना जाए, जो भी गीला लकड़ी है, सूखा लकड़ी है, वहां का निस्तार है, तो वो चोरी न जाए करके वहां रोज देखरेख करते हैं। ग्राम सभा में 5 कुटुंब हर दिन जंगल देखने के लिए जाता है। वहां कुछ कटा हुआ झाड़ है या बाम्बू है या नया पक्षी आया है क्या, प्राणी आया है क्या, कोई नया मानव भी आया हो, तो वो फिर गश्त रजिस्टर में वो लोग नोंद करते हैं। तीसरा जो है फायर लाइन करते हैं कि धूपकला में जंगल में आग लग जाते हैं, अगर दूसरे गांव के जंगल में आग लगे है तो हमारे गांव के जंगल तक की वो आग ना पहुंचे, ताकि छोटे छोटे पौधा है, वहां रहने वाले पशु है, पक्षी है, बारीक चींटे है, मुंगिया है, ये अगर नहीं जलना चाहिए। तो वो भी हम कर रहे हैं कि फायर लाइन की तरह अपने जंगल की संरक्षण भी हम कर रहे हैं। और प्लांटेशन तैयार कर रहे हैं, जैसे यहाँ देख रहे हैं आप लोग की ग्राम सभा खुद की जंगल को बढ़ाने के लिए कि वो बाम्बू का प्लांटेशन भी कर रहे हैं, जामुन का प्लांटेशन कर रहे हैं, वहाँ मुहा का प्लांटेशन कर रहे हैं जहाँ गांव को जिस झाड़ की जरूरत है। और तीसरा है कि जो CFR क्षेत्र में हमें 10 साल में क्या क्या चीज करना है, उसका एक वन कार्य आराखड़ा ग्राम सभा अभी खुद बना रहे हैं। तो वहाँ गांव का इतिहास है, कुटुंब है, वहां रहने वाला जो भी वन औषधि है, जंगल से हम लाते हैं लकड़ी फाटा, जो भी चीज है, और 10 साल में हम CFR क्षेत्र में क्या क्या हम काम करेंगे, इसका एक आराखड़ा तैयार करके शासन को वो सादर कर रहे हैं। रोजगार हमी का तो मैं बताया कि ग्राम सभा खुद भी अभी CFR क्षेत्र में TCM नाली है, वन तालाब है, CCT है, रांची सफाई है, वो बाम्बू का जो झाड़ का जो छटिंग करते हैं, तो ऐसे काम जो है ग्राम सभा के माध्यम से अभी हो रहे हैं। तो इसमें और है कि जो भी गांव को जो पैसा आता है, जैसे कि तेंदू और बांबू बिक्री व्यवस्थापन से जो भी गांव में जो पैसा आता है ग्राम सभा में, तो मजूरी तो हम तुरंत नकदी करके दे देते हैं, लेकिन रॉयल्टी का जो पैसा है वो बैंक खाता में आते हैं। तो वहां से हर ग्राम सभा ने अलग अलग नियम बनाए हैं कि एक कुल रॉयल्टी के उत्पन्न के 5% हो या 10% या 20%, उन ग्राम सभा के नियम के आधार से वो लोग काटते हैं और वो एक गांव फंड करके ग्राम सभा के खाता में जमा रहते हैं। और उसका जो पैसा जो है वो गांव विकास के लिए, जैसे कि हम 15 अगस्त में अगर बच्चों के लिए ड्रेस नहीं आया 15 अगस्त में, तो हम हमारे ही गांव के बच्चे को हम लोग ड्रेस है या शूज है, बूट है, मोजा है या पाठ्य पुस्तक जो है ऐसे दे देते हैं। दूसरा जो है कि गांव में कुछ आरोग्य अगर बिगड़ गया है तो कुछ फवारने का जो काम है, या एक गांव तो ऐसा है कि उन्होंने रॉयल्टी के ही पैसा से एक बहुत बड़े तालाब भी बनाया। उन्होंने पहले छोटा सा तालाब, लेकिन उसको खोलीकरण किए कि जंगल जाते समय जो जंगल प्राणी हैं उनको पीने के लिए पानी भी मिले, हम भी अगर गए धूप कला में तो हमें भी कुछ पानी मिल सके। तो उन्होंने अच्छा से तालाब भी बनाया है और छोटे छोटे ऐसे उपक्रम हैं, बैठक के लिए है, छोटे बच्चों के लिए है, कुछ कुपोषण बच्चे रहते हैं उनके लिए कुछ देना है। तो ये सारी जो चीज है वो 10% जो रॉयल्टी का जो रकम है गांव फंड में रहते हैं वो देते हैं। और रॉयल्टी का जो पैसा है वो दिवाली के सीजन में ही मिलता है, यानी कभी भी मिलता है ऐसा तो नहीं हो रहा है। तीसरा जो है कि हमारे यहाँ गौनवन उपज संकलन, खरीदी, विक्री व्यवस्थापन करण्याचा जे स्वामित्व हक्क जो मिला है, वहां से मुहा है, चारोड़ी है, जामुन है, तोरी है, चरोटा है, ये सामूहिक पद्धत से जो खरीदी कर लेते हैं और जहां अच्छा मार्केट मिलता है, जहां अच्छा भाव मिलता है वहां पर बेचते हैं। इसके फायदा एक हो रहा है कि गांव में जो बाहर के जो व्यापारी आते थे और उससे जो हमारे आर्थिक शोषण होते थे वो रुका है, और गांव में ही यानी बाजार जो है वो अच्छा मिल रहा है, जो रेट जो बोलेंगे वो अच्छे से मिल रहे हैं। और गांव की पैसा जो है वो गांव में ही खेल रहे हैं, एक इसका एक फायदा जो है तो ये एक दिख रहे हैं। दूसरा जो है कि अपन जामुन व्यापार में भी हम देख रहे हैं कि पहले जो दलाल आते थे, बाहर से व्यापारी आते थे और वो 1 कैरेट को 200 या 300 रुपया में खरीद करके वो अच्छे से मार्केट में जा करके अच्छा पैसा कमाता था। लेकिन आज हम बचत गट की महिला और ग्राम सभा ये जो मिल करके खुद ही जामुन का जो व्यापार कर रहे हैं, तो साधारणतः गांव में ही उनको अच्छा से भाव मिल रहे। 1 कैरेट जो 300-400 रुपया में जा रहे थे वो आज 700-800 रुपया में गांव में ही कैरेट में जा रहे हैं, और डायरेक्ट नागपुर के मार्केट में गांव के ही लोग ले जा रहे हैं, तो उनको अच्छा बोनस भी मिल रहा है, मजूरी प्लस बोनस। तो इसके वजह से क्या है कि हर घर की एक आर्थिक दृष्टि में सुधारना जो है ये दिख रहे हैं। महिलाओं के हाथ में पैसा आने लगे है, वो लोग महिलाएं भी है कि उनके जो आरोग्य के लिए सही टाइम में खर्चा कर पा रही हैं, बच्चों के शिक्षण के लिए समय में खर्चा कर पा रही है। महिलाओं के हाथ में जो तेंदू और बाम्बू का जो पैसा आता है तो उनको भी एक अच्छे खुशी लगते हैं कि कभी कुछ चीज का पैसा हमारे हाथ में तो नहीं आया था, लेकिन ये गौनवन उपज का जो पैसा है हमारे हाथ में आता है। हम कुछ पैसे का निर्णय खुद ले लेते हैं कि मेरे लिए क्या खरीदी करना है, परिवार के लिए क्या लेना है, आरोग्य शिक्षण के लिए कितने पैसा रखना है। तो ये एक नियोजन के इसमें भी महिलाओं का जो सहभाग है वो अच्छी तरह से दिख पा रहे हैं। और दूसरा जो है कि जो गौनवन उपज है, चाहे बाम्बू को है, तेंदू भी है, हेड़ा बेहड़ा भी है, एक एक पद्धत है कि जामुन का सीजन है वो साधारण 15 दिन तक चलते हैं। लेकिन लोग क्या करते हैं कि जंगल में रहने वाले पशु पक्षी प्राणी को भी खाने के लिए चाहिए, हम पूरा ही जामुन हम तोड़ डालेंगे और बेच डालेंगे तो ये क्या खाएंगे। तो 8 दिन तक ये संकलन का सीजन रखते हैं, फिर बाद में ये आपो आप ही बंद कर देते हैं। इसकी वजह से जो रहने वाले हम जैव विविधता जो बोल रहे हैं उनकी खान पान की व्यवस्था भी एक गांव करती है। उसी तरह से बाम्बू का भी है और तेंदू का भी है कि वो पूरे के पूरे ही बाम्बू नहीं निकालते, पूरे की तेंदू नहीं निकालती, उसका एक सीजन रहता है, लिमिट रहता है कि तेंदू सीजन सिर्फ 8 दिन ही चलेगा, 10 या 11 दिन या 12 दिन नहीं चलेगा। क्योंकि वो चालू रहेगा तो फिर आगे के लिए वो जो है वो बच के नहीं रहेगा, पूरा हम खत्म कर डालेंगे, हम पैसा के लालच में चाहे उसको कटाई करके या फिर पूरा तोड़ डालेंगे तो वो नाश हो जाएंगे। तो उनका जो संकलन करने का जो पद्धति है वो भी हमारे आदिवासियों का जो परंपरागत जो रीति रिवाज जो बोलते हैं जिस तरह से चलते आ रहे हैं उसी तरह से हमें हमें आज की गरज भगाने के लिए और सामने के लिए कैसे उसको बचाना है इसके विचार यानी सोचते हुए वो बचा के भी ये चारे का नियोजन करते हैं। वो जो है गवर्नमेंट उपज का तो वो पूरी तरह से काटा नहीं जाता है इसमें। तो इस तरह से यानी जो है यहाँ पर हम लोग देखा है कि बाम्बू का है ये हमारे और पारंपरिक जो है जो कि हम अभी जो बाहर से जो आते हैं रेडीमेड पतलाड़ी है, दोना है, गिलास है, वाटी है, उसमें ना जाते हुए हमारे पारंपरिक जो और भी जो पतलाड़ी है पत्ता का जो दाई बना रही है पतलाड़ी, तो आज भी हम वो शादी में सट्ठी में मरने के कार्यक्रम में हम वही वापर कर रहे हैं क्योंकि ये अच्छा है, इससे कुछ अपने सेहत के लिए भी फायदा है और जो समाज एक दूसरे को वो मदद करते हैं। एक परिवार में अगर काम है तो 10 महिलाएं बैठ कर के वो पतरारी बना लेते हैं, दोना बना लेते हैं, तो एक दूसरे को हम सहकार्य भी करते हैं और उसके काम अच्छे ढंग से यानी सफल भी हो जाते हैं। इस तरह से हमारे यहाँ जो CFR का जो काम है वो चल रहे हैं अभी यहाँ गढ़चिरौली में। साधारणतः हमारे गढ़चिरौली में 12 ब्लॉक है और वहाँ 1600 गांव में से यानी 1400 गांव को तो CFR मिल चुका है और वहाँ से साधारण 200-250 जो ग्राम सभा है आज भी रोजगार हमी योजना का अमलबजावनी यंत्र न करके एक अच्छा से काम कर रहे हैं रोजगार हमी का काम का। और दूसरा जो है कि गवर्नमेंट उपज के जो संकलन उसका व्यवस्थापन का जो काम है मार्केटिंग वाला, तो उससे जो है हमारे आदिवासी समुदाय है और वहाँ रहने वाले इतर जो समुदाय है उनकी आर्थिक स्तर जो है धीरे धीरे उसमें बदलाव आ रहे हैं और ज्यादातर महिलाओं की जो आर्थिक निर्णय में जो एकदम समाज से कुटुंब से जो वंचित थे वहां से खूब सारे चीज है जो बदलाव दिख रहे हैं। जो शिवार फेरी में महिलाएं सामने रहते हैं, अखाड़ा बनाते समय भी महिलाएं ही आगे रहते हैं, प्लांटेशन में जो है तेंदू पत्ता के फड़े में भी महिलाएं जो रहते हैं। तो इस तरह से एकूण CFR जे मिला है ग्राम सभा को, तो ग्राम सभा का अधिकार, उनका काम, उनका जवाबदारी और जो भी जो फायदा दिख रहा है इसके बारे में मैं बात तो रखी हूँ। अगर किसी का कुछ सवाल होगा तो मैं जरूर उसके उत्तर दूंगी। धन्यवाद।
Okay, thank you so much, Kumari Tai. It was a pleasure listening to the learnings from the management of CFR areas. बहुत धन्यवाद और आपके सुनने में बहुत अच्छा लगा. For the short time, I will invite the next speaker, Miss Shalini Bhutani. Who will share with us the lessons of opportunities, challenges, and safeguards while stimulating innovative schemes such as benefit sharing mechanisms, drawing from the experience of you working with the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act, particularly the National Gene Fund under it. So, ma'am, share your.
Right. Thank you very much, and my greetings to the fellow panelists and also all the other attendees. I have 10 minutes, I understand, and I'd like to make 5 key points. One is because you said lessons, which means lessons are derived from what we've previously done, and which means going back a little into history. You started us off with the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, and the foundations of what that looks like today were essentially laid by the Convention on Biological Diversity itself. And so 1992, when the conversations at the Rio Earth Summit happened, where these UN conventions came up. The CBD, of course, as you all know, the text was there and it came into force, the Convention on Biological Diversity in 1993. And what was the positions of the indigenous people, local communities, tribal groups, etc. worldwide, and what were their expectations from such a global regime on biodiversity? Their positions were essentially walking on two legs. One was the biodiversity governance that has been referred to by both the previous speakers, about how do you support decentralized decision making, and also for the involvement of communities and for self-determination of how do you create a space where decisions on local natural resources and their associated knowledge of peoples that live so connectedly with their local resources, how can their worldview, their cosmovisions be given a space? And the second challenge, which really galvanized the global community, particularly in the global south at that time, was the whole issue of biopiracy, quote unquote, and the fact that there was privatization of knowledge that was happening. And apart from the physical, genetic, material and biological resources, the associated knowledge was being accessed and being collected, and which was the basis for commercial products. And the whole issue of biodiversity justice then emerged, which brings me to my second point, which is 30 years ago, the positions taken by the countries and the communities and their respective interests have also evolved. There was very strong solidarity amongst the global south at that time, where India was also taking a very lead role as a mega diverse country, along with African governments and Latin American governments. And their interests were essentially as provider countries, providers both of genetic resources as well as the associated knowledge. But today, India is as much an accessor and a user country. So that is, our responses vis-a-vis some of these international frameworks also come from that. Likewise, communities have also gone through their journeys from either being pragmatic about it and aligning with the system in a way to negotiate space within the system. The other is a more principled approach that if the system is not really responding and these international or national frameworks are not responding to their vision of how to move forward, then they have kept away. And that is why there has been not a uniform response and engagement from local communities to these different frameworks that have emerged. And I think that's an important thing to factor in as we go into this 2.0 phase of the biodiversity management, which I call a 2.0 because as has already been said, there have been amendments 2022 onwards, and 2022 is also when the Global Biodiversity Framework came up. So we have a whole new national and international framework to respond to and locate all our discussions on financing. And clearly when you said financing, you started us off on what could be these innovative practices and tools and solutions for mainstreaming the finance and the biofinance for local communities. Currently, the key Global Biodiversity Framework Fund is managed by the Global Environment Facility, and 20% of its capital is supposed to be allocated to indigenous peoples' local communities, and there is an indigenous people advisory group that looks at how these monies will be dispersed. There's also the CBD Voluntary Fund, which essentially organizes the travel and participation of indigenous peoples and local communities in the CBD negotiation. But bringing us to present times and the newer challenges that the NBA chair has also pointed out about digitization, and in a digital economy, what kind of other challenges are emerging both at the financing side as well as on the biodiversity justice side. And so you have a very critical fund that came a few years ago, which is called the Kali Fund. This is very specific to fair and equitable sharing of benefits from the use of digital sequence information. And 50% of those resources need to go to indigenous people, local community priorities. So I think we need to keep that on the horizon and to see how we best deal with that. I come to my third point when I speak about these financing schemes. And my third point is that we cannot see the Global Biodiversity Framework in isolation. It is not merely a pathway of taking the Convention on Biological Diversity and the whole biodiversity justice trajectory forward. You have to locate it in how the trade regimes have emerged. And even the CBD, if you recall, the CBD when it came in 1992 and came into force in 1993, shortly after that in 1995, the World Trade Organization came into being, which means global trade and global trade rules. And under those trade rules, the agreements on how intellectual property will be applied in all fields of technology will be, what the rules of engagement of that will be. And now the conversation in WTO is how to, in a sense, integrate the vision of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework into a nature-positive trade for sustainable development. So the bottom line is that we continue to do trade, but how do we make that nature positive? So, which takes us to the market-based approaches that have really got preeminence in these last 30 years. Because the CBD came, and the CBD came at a time when the GATT negotiations are happening, and eventually the implementation of Convention on Biological Diversity and global rules on biodiversity started to be implemented in the national jurisdictions in different countries in a post-WTO time. And so that is a critical cue on how some of the conservation and also how the financing mechanisms have turned out to be what they are. Because the fundamental thing was that the WTO and its TRIPS agreement on intellectual properties did was to talk about market-based approaches on how you can package it in a market economy, and which brings us to the issue of, even in fundraising, how do you value and how do you do the valuation of these biological resources? While communities were looking at intrinsic value, their traditional values like Kumari laid out, but the conversation has quickly gone towards what kind of economic incentives need to be given even to industry to fall in line with conservation. And industry has been very clear from the beginning that if we do not get any intellectual property rights, there will be no financial resources to do benefit sharing. So the space to even push forward some of the non-market based approaches, which are called NMAs, is a huge space where more innovative approaches can be taken. And interestingly, when the amendments were done in 2023 in the Biodiversity Framework, was also a time when the Environment Ministry came up with the Green Credits Program in 2023, which also talks about, creates a space, a law and policy environment for biodiversity credits. Just like you have the parallel of carbon credits, in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So the whole idea now of, and at an international level too, there is an International Biodiversity Credit Alliance, the BCA, which is talking about how do you use these market-based instruments. And I brought in the WTO and the TRIPS because you specifically asked me to speak on the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Act, which came because we had our TRIPS obligations under the WTO, and therefore as an IPR law, this came in 2001. So we have over 20 years of experience of how intellectual property rights that have been granted on farmers' varieties, have they become a basis on which benefit sharing has accrued to the farming communities that have kept these varieties alive and in use. Now, as of last month, according to the data of the Plant Authority, which sits in the Pusa Institute in New Delhi, almost 10,716 IPR, which is the plant variety certificates, have been granted. 49% of them are on farmers' varieties. But if we look at the whole issue of whether benefits have accrued to farmers from these about 5,000 plus farmers' varieties that have been registered with an IPR, there's very little evidence to show that benefit sharing has accrued. So we really need to see how the intellectual property rights system is really helping communities on the ground for the continuance of their knowledge, and if there have been any cases where farmers' varieties have been used as a base material to develop new varieties, and has any benefit from that financial accrued to farmers. And I'm not even getting into the largest discussion, which is on if the continuance of farmers' varieties is something that we all agree is necessary from the global biodiversity and agrobiodiversity loss concern, then we also need to develop and a supportive ecosystem where farmers' knowledge systems, their knowledge, innovation and practices like Article 8J of the Convention on Biological Diversity lays down. What kind of supportive environment are we preparing and setting up for those systems to continue? An interesting thing is that our National Biological Diversity Act kind of separates out the work of the Plant Authority and the National Biodiversity Authority in a sense that they do keep connected, but any IPR issues and any privatization of knowledge and genetic material in crops, in the crop sector, is handled largely by the Plant Protection and Farmers' Rights Authority. And there are 5 biodiversity management committees that have also been granted IPR under the Protection of Plant Variety and Farmers' Rights Act. So it's an interesting example to see whether those 5 BMCs have been able to mainstream their varieties that were registered, whether they were sorghum or legumes, etc., and whether they were able to harness back any commercial benefits from such registration under an IPR law, because those will provide valuable guidance on how to move forward, given that this is a law that came even before the Biodiversity Act and is currently undergoing an amendment. Right, whether through a patent or a plant variety certificate, is unthinkable even for several local communities. And that's why even participatory guarantee schemes, which are alternatives to the expensive industry certification is something that has been kept alive. There are also new non-financial instruments and mechanisms, whether it's farmer-to-farmer exchange, peasant-to-peasant exchanges, and non-intellectual property right approaches like open source seed initiatives that are currently running in 5-6 countries. And with that, I'll particularly like to flag the alternative international agreements that even the Global Biodiversity Framework has to factor in. One, of course, is the United Nations Declaration on the Right of Indigenous Peoples, which came in 2007. And the other is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Peasants and people living and working in rural areas. How are their rights going to be taken forward? Because you did flag a human rights-based approach. So these are the human rights instruments globally that need to be tempering some of the trade agreements and the global biodiversity agreements while going forward. I would also like to flag, because the issue of digitization came into the discussion, is that there are new data sovereignty ideas that are under discussion. And digitization poses a whole new challenge on how do you even, in the agriculture sector, where the agri-stack has been developed as a digital public infrastructure, how do you dovetail the work of the agri-stack with the digitization of the people's biodiversity registers that will happen? So that is something that practically that needs to be taken forward. There will be issues there again about the digital personal data protection of the farming communities, of the biodiversity management communities, of even the fisherfolk communities or livestock keepers, when their not only their own identities are given a digital form, but also the resources of those are documented in these electronic databases. So yes, there are emerging issues, and I think those also need to be kept on the horizon. I'd finally like to close my 5 points by saying that the Global Biodiversity Framework is about living in harmony. It is not about living in harmonization. So I think the fundamental thing is, how do we accommodate for the different diversities that there are in the different approaches, which will be fundamental and a fundamental organizing principle for the work forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalini. To let the participants and also the panelists know, we do have a webinar on People's Biodiversity Register, Community Biodiversity Register, where we will discuss more on digitalization of PBRs and the opportunities and the issues that's there. So because it has emerged as one of the things that has come in different talks. So for the next talk, I invite Naveen Namboothiri. Can you, sir, talk about the opportunities and challenges that communities have in accessing funds for biodiversity conservation, sustainable use, and also livelihood in coastal and marine spaces, because that's where we don't have a specifically dedicated legislation that offers funding opportunities, but maybe we can bring different other existing fundings to it, and also highlight some of the things that Shalini has also highlighted, the issues of using the innovative market-based mechanisms for conservation, so under the GBF. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Alfonso. So, like you said, there is a fair bit of neglect of the coastal and marine systems that has happened historically. There are no dedicated, large funding mechanisms available, formal kind of funding mechanisms available specifically for coastal marine ecosystems and the people who depend on those ecosystems. But there are some, provisions under certain schemes that the government has initiated recently that directly, indirectly kind of, so this is aside from the general BMCs and the, support mechanisms that are available at a gram panchayat level, generally for fisher communities to access some of those funding at a gram panchayat level has been one challenge, has been that the fisher communities generally engaging with Gram Sabha discussions, being part of a lot of Gram Sabha conversations of planned GPDP planning and all of that. Fisher communities generally have been a little hesitant to be proactively engaging in those spaces. So that itself has been a big challenge for them to access. There have been some good case studies. I think I saw Robert Panipilla here. So there are some people who've actually tried to embed a strong coastal marine focus into, BMCs and into developing PBRs, but they are very, very few instances of those. But what are those other mechanisms where coastal communities can access formal funding mechanisms is, I think there's under the PMMSY, which is the Prime Minister's Matsya Sampada Yojana, there are some funding available for, but they are very specific because a lot of the fisheries related, funding available is to promote production rather than towards conservation or biodiversity management or ensuring people's rights and access, IP rights. All of those don't factor in much, but it's a very production centric kind of approach within which you have funding mechanisms for artificial reef, for deploying artificial reefs. There are some schemes available, particularly in freshwater systems for ranching. So again, a lot of these are, like I said, geared towards increasing production and not so much from a biodiversity conservation point of view. So what happens is very indiscriminate deployment of artificial reefs along our coastline, which disrupts in many ways the ecological balance, but also freshwater ranching kind of approaches leads to only ranching of seeds, of species that are available commercially, right? Otherwise, it becomes really difficult to do ranching initiatives. So selectively, introducing species of commercial value over those of biodiversity value and all of that is happening. But like I said, there are very few dedicated government funding mechanisms that are available currently for coastal and marine fishing communities. But there are these larger, a lot of the funding in the coastal marine spaces have been through international funding, sources, both, co-funded where the state and the center and the international agencies collectively fund, or it would be, entirely funded by international agencies. There have been multiple such initiatives in the past. I think from what's active currently, there is the GCF, there is the BBNJ, The Green Climate Fund has a Enhancing Climate Resilience of India's Coastal Communities, a dedicated program. I think it's coming to an end in 2027, but that's specifically targeting states of AP, Maharashtra, Odisha. I think there was a financial that together coming up to 130 million. But again, the problem with accessing a lot of these is the mechanism of disbursement, right? So given the compliance requirements, reporting requirements, a lot of these become very inaccessible for really small scale CBOs and all of them. So it again ends up with NGOs, non-governmental organizations like Dakshin, who then have to be the intermediary in a lot of these kind of initiatives, which again really defeats the purpose of making it available directly to communities. There's a fairly large initiative that's coming up, which I thought I should spend some time on. This is the Large Shore Initiative. This is a World Bank funded project. It is, I think, has a huge funding outlay of 850 million US dollars, which is, I think, around 8,200 crores in Indian rupees. And currently, it's been rolled out in 2 states, TN and Karnataka. It's called the TN Shore Project in Tamil Nadu and the K-Show project in Karnataka. Totally, I think around $212 million US. There's a 70-30 arrangement with state split of the finances with the state government as well. And the target is to do restoration efforts in covering 30,000 hectares, create 1 lakh green jobs, 70,000 people are trained, and the objective is to also, and additionally develop, defense mechanism for coastal areas. So the objective is to build climate resilience while also ensuring restoration of ecosystems. And there's a fair amount of focus on circular economy, particularly marine debris, plastic removal kind of projects. So I did a quick, I did look up how this is being rolled out. Still quite a bit in its nascent stages, but for Tamil Nadu, there's a 675 crore outlay. A lot of it goes towards restoration of mangroves and seagrass beds, but most of the sites identified are for mangrove restoration. There is a plan to set up village mangrove councils. Each of those councils will directly receive a certain capital, and under those councils you will have a lot of restoration efforts being taken up. These councils are basically one elected member from the particular village along with the local range officer, and there are subcommittees that this committee can set up. So there's a fair bit of overlap. These committees also become a way to do carbon credit trading as well. I'm not very sure what exactly those mechanisms are. Couldn't find out too much information about that online. And there's also a focus on plastic recycling, identifying plastic hotspots in marine areas and all of that. Again, the fund dispersal models for these are not entirely clear. But yeah, so some of these kind of initiatives exist in Karnataka. The same K-Show project has, so I think in Tamil Nadu, there's a special purpose vehicle created specifically for this. It's called the Tamil Nadu Green Climate Company. And it's through this special vehicle that multiple departments, multiple ministries will kind of converge and take these efforts forward. Similarly, we have a Karnataka Eco Restoration Society set up, another SPV for Karnataka. I think there's a financial layout of 840 to 850 crores. There's a Department of Fisheries, Forest, Rural Development, Panchayati Raj, municipalities, Pollution Control Board, and the Karnataka Biodiversity Board, all part of the special vehicle. And the disbursement is again through there are district project management units to be set up in the 3 coastal districts in Karnataka. And a lot of it's like I said, the fund dispersal mechanism was not clear, but what does it mean in terms of direct transfer transfer of benefits for communities? I think SHGs can apply for a lot of alternate livelihood kind of initiatives within this. The JFMCs, the Joint Forest Management Committees, can apply for restoring the coastal areas. What are those bioshield plantation efforts? All of those kind of funding mechanisms are being mobilized. Fisher cooperatives can apply for a lot of funding opportunities under the scheme. Again, what exactly those mechanisms are is not very clear. There's also, interestingly, Karnataka's K-Show project strongly focuses on the free, prior, and informed consent framework. And then the other buckets would be market pathways. This is something that we are finding is becoming an increasingly, entirely different kind of pathway for leveraging funding. And one of the main pathways that is currently becoming increasingly, rolled out in India is what you call your fisheries improvement projects. So because the global market enforces a lot of regulations on seafood, there are a lot of intermediaries who try and put in these certification mechanisms. And these certification mechanisms, if you have a FIP, which is your Fisheries Improvement Project, in place, then you get access to premium markets in the global seafood markets, right? So that involves direct fund transfer to it is meant to go to community-based organizations, but right now a lot of those funding mechanisms are being leveraged through intermediaries. So basically, export companies form coalitions, or specific seafood production groups, or it could be fish meal plants, and they collectivize and leverage these funds. Again, the question of benefit transfer is a big problem. So there's a serious distributional justice kind of a concern there, in the sense that a lot of that funds don't trickle down actually to the people. There are also increasing blue carbon market is becoming a big sector. Mangrove plantations have become like the next big way of, putting in a lot of funding into the coastal marine spaces. Again, while this blue carbon credit system is increasing, there are strong concerns about blue justice. Land grabbing is a serious concern. Access to areas where a lot of these initiatives are happening is becoming a very strong point of conflict on the ground. Loss of livelihoods, distribution, not the actual credits not reaching the final beneficiaries. All those kind of concerns exist. We've also done a bit of work on the philanthropic sector and trying to understand, what kind of resources are available now from the philanthropic sector. There's a recent report that came out from Bain and Company. They looked at how much is available as philanthropic funding, private philanthropic funding in India. I think they've come up with a $16 billion estimate. Again, very, very small percentage of this goes into environmental funding. And I think it's about 0.5% or something like that goes into the environmental funding. Most of these goes into legacy sectors, like where your results or impacts are very clear, right? Like funding like education, health, livelihoods kind of sectors get a lot of funding, but very, very little goes into environmental funding. Again, while funding mechanisms are available internationally, current FCRA regulations and all of that make it impossible for any civil society organizations to benefit from any of those funding. We do have increasingly Indian philanthropists and CSRs wanting to invest in the environmental sector unfortunately, a lot of those investments are also tied to very specific commitments. So it would be towards, restoration, which again, like I said, has its own problem, because the easiest restoration effort is mangrove restoration, and that leads to a lot of access and, coastal commons not being accessible to communities and all of those kind of issues. Indian funding also requires a lot of due diligence. Then there's a lot of, other kinds of hurdles to accessing those. So small CSOs and community-based organizations, again, find it really hard to access those kind of funding. Like I said, they're not customized to actual requirements on the ground. So there's a set template, and a lot of it is rolling out those like scaling is only about, rolling out these set templates across sites, right? And that really doesn't. So what you see is like along the coastal areas are these, remnants of multiple projects that have come up and really not taken off the ground. So there's a lot of investment going in, but all in the wrong sectors and in the wrong manner, right? So yeah, that's overall what I thought I'll share, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Naveen. Because of paucity of time, I will quickly move to the next speaker. We have with us Kavita, who will tell us more about the opportunities and challenges that BMCs under BD Act and CFRMCs under the FRA face with respect to accessing and administering funds for conservation, sustainable use and management. Over to you. You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Thank you, Alfonso. Just give me 2 seconds to share my screen, and then I'm glad that most of my points have already been covered by the former speakers. That reflects our thoughts are so resonate to each other. So I will take from those points and will try to share our experience working with the community on ground. Yeah. So good morning, everyone. Today I will walk you through our experience in fostering community stewardship through flexible financing mechanisms. Our work is fundamentally premised on 2 powerful legal instruments, Biological Diversity Act and Forest Rights Act, to restore ecosystems, secure local livelihoods, and unlock self-sustaining local finances for the conservation actions. Just to give you the overview of the organization, we are based in Kutch, Gujarat, a 3-decade-old organization closely working with the local communities, enabling them to protect and conserve their ecologies. We believe those who live closest to the resources are best equipped to protect them, respecting their deep-rooted knowledge. Pardon? Protect them respecting their deep-rooted knowledge system and connection to their ecological resources that sustain their economies. Our interventions drive system-level change and set policy narratives that recognize communities' rights in resource management while mobilizing value chain investments to strengthen local economies around indigenous breeds and customary grazing resources. Kutch is a unique semi-arid landscape with fragile ecosystems, highly productive grassland to the north, open thorn and scrub forest along the ridgeline, saline mangroves along the coastline, and salt marshes in the run. These conditions and this rich socio-cultural heritage have evolved deeply rooted pastoralism in the landscape. For instance, the Bunny, Asia's largest tropical grassland, is managed by Sindhi pastoralist who rears bunny buffalo and Kankraj cattle. Similarly, the dry open thorn forests are managed by Rabaris and Jat pastoralists herding indigenous sheep, camel, and goat breeds. While coastal mangroves serve as a lifeline for nomadic swimming kharai camels, none of this landscape would exist in their current ecological state without the pastoralist, and conversely, these communities cannot survive without these ecologies. India has 2 incredible legislations that empower local communities to take charge of their ecologies, and our work is precisely premised on them. First, the Biological Diversity Act, which already Mr. Tiwari has mentioned, that empowers village panchayats to constitute their biodiversity management committee to document local biodiversity using PBRs, prepare conservation action plans, and manage local finances to improve the biodiversity indicator and the region. And secondly, the Forest Rights Act of 2006 that empowers Gram Sabhas to constitute CFMRCs to execute their management plans. This acts as a powerful tool to secure community forest rights, recognizing the legal rights of the pastoral communities to manage and protect their traditional grazing resources. While looking at the governance framework of the biodiversity management committees, as Mr. Tiwari mentioned, most of villages have formulated their BMCs. However, formation alone is not the sufficient. Consistent engagement to help them understand their roles, governance functions, and the legal provisions is essential through ongoing capacity building measures and handholding. It also requires facilitating biodiversity management committees to open and manage their statutory bank accounts, enabling them to receive and deploy finances. The process then moves to identifying the traditional knowledge holders, equipping youth with ecological knowledge, and engaging them in the documenting native flora and fauna to prepare their PBRs. The ultimate aim is to support these BMCs in identifying their own priority conservation actions as they develop their conservation action plan and helping them to secure the finances to execute them. Similarly, let's look at the governance framework of the CFMRCs. Our journey began in 2008, supporting the Bunny Breeder Association to register their indigenous breed, the Bunny Buffalo, with the NBAGR, perhaps the first indigenous breed in the country registered by a community. Following this, community processes began in 2012 to file claims under the Forest Rights Act, facilitating Gram Sabhas to document community rights, mapping their traditional grazing resources, delineating boundaries, and collecting evidences for the submission. While titles are pending, 47 villages have proactively come forward and constituted their CFMRCs and started developing their management plans. Combining community knowledge with RAMBLE, collaborative field research stations, its decadal scientific research informed communities' management plans, focusing on restoring grasslands by removing invasive weeds and enforcing community-led rotational grazing protocols. Our certificate course on pastoral ecology equips local youth to foster leadership for the CFMRC-led conservation and management actions on ground. As former speakers already mentioned about the different avenues of the finances available for the conservation actions, but for any community-led conservation to work, having clear, accessible financial pathway is absolutely crucial. Both these legal frameworks open up several opportunities to fund local actions, but it is the question.
Hi, Kavita. We can't hear you.
Converge. Yeah. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you were. We couldn't hear you for some second, but please continue. Yeah,
sure. Converging existing government programs is, we have found that in our country, there are multiple programs that supports the conservation actions on ground. The question lies, how do we converge and allow these local committees to converge with the government schemes and access those finances? Leveraging, as Mr. Tiwari rightly mentioned, the leveraging access and benefit sharing fees from the commercial buyers for use of local resources, and fourth, connecting to the innovative market solutions, and finally, bringing direct CSR investment for these local committees to really make them confident that they can execute their conservation actions plan on ground. While other avenues exist, these 5 remain critical to ensure financing for local actions, and we believe that the other global financing mechanism is way behind for the local committees to access those mechanisms. But at the same time, every opportunity comes with its own field level challenges, and so the path of these committees too is full of frictions. Prioritized conservation actions are often sidelined over development priorities when integrated into village development plans to converge existing government schemes. Similarly, administrative delays from concerned departments and capacity gaps at the local committee level to handle the legal and administrative complex processes frequently slow down the execution on ground. Similarly, complex market mechanisms often exclude local communities to navigate these pathways. And finally, the absence of recognition of rights or pending claims leaves local committees deprived of official funding mechanisms. And therefore, it is our duty to really address these bottlenecks to make financing truly sustainable at the local level, so that the indigenous and the committees closest to the resources can really empowered, and they can really take actions to conserve and protect their resources. Let's see how collaborative approach, strong community engagement, and flexible financing can lead conservation actions on ground. In 2014, in partnership with the State Biodiversity Board, we helped 35 villages to formulate their BMCs and document their PBRs. Later, these BMCs were supported to identify priority conservation actions in the region for which CSR funds were available directly to them. This has enabled 15 villages to independently manage their budgets to restore 1,200 hectares of the dry thorn forest, creating suitable habitats for the endemic wild fauna, and taking specific conservation actions. This has proved that when local communities are trusted and financially empowered, they can manage their ecologies far more efficiently than external agencies. The similar case with these CFMRCs. Out of 47 committees constituted in Bunni, 23 have developed comprehensive management plans supported by CSR funding. 21 of them have restored 30 square kilometers of their grazing land and waterscapes by systematically clearing invasive Prosopis juliflora, allowing native grass to regrow. Our long-term monitoring shows a 10 to 12% increase in the species richness and a 30% increase in the biomass productivity in the grassland. Later, these efforts were augmented via voluntary carbon market. In a pilot project, 3 CFMRCs have restored around 11 square kilometers of grassland, clearing the weed, converting biomass into biochar, and applying it back to nourish the soil. This has generated carbon credits, and revenue from the carbon credit covered the operational and production cost, establishing a self-sustaining financial model. Strong community processes and capacity building measures made this complex path possible for these committees to navigate. To conclude, I would say true conservation cannot happen without legitimate legal recognitions, building grassroots capacities, and most importantly, ensuring sustainable financing for the community-led conservation actions. When we trust local stewards with both the legal authority and the financial tools, ecosystem recovers, local economies grow, and the conservation becomes self-sustaining. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kavita. So that was the last speaker. And because we already, past 11:30, it's 11:50, we have a couple of questions. I will just ask one question. And this is to the chairperson of NBA. And I will email the other questions to the respective panelists. We have questions to Naveen. We have questions, a couple of questions to Virendra Tiwari sir, and also we have one question for Kumari Tai. And maybe we will have questions to Kavita and Shalini. But now, Virendra Tiwari sir, there is one question that is on e-PBR process, which is, I think, has been discussed by most of the panelists. So this is related to, does e-PBR scheme that NBA is undertaking follow the FPIC process? Are BMCs informed about the risk and benefits of digitizing their knowledge on biodiversity?
So thank you for the question. And so this project, this GIZ project is being implemented in 14 states. And we have taken, see, it is very difficult to take consent from each and every BMC. So as you understand, so these 14 states have 1,55,000 BMCs. We cannot approach and get consent from them, but we have approached the State Biodiversity Board, and from them we have taken the consent to implement this project. See, what happens is when you have this PBR document, see you how PBR was prepared. So what happened? Despite the act coming into force in year 2003, the PBRs were not prepared by any of the BMCs. But in year 2016-17, National Green Tribunal gave an order to complete this PBR within a limited time frame. So within 1 year or so, all these 2 lakh, almost 72,000 PBRs were prepared. However, there is a doubt about the quality of the PBR. So since it was done very hurriedly for compliance of the NGT order, I think it has not properly reflected the bioresources which are found. It was as mentioned by Naveen Namboothiri regarding the marine sector. So if you see the focus was more on the the resources which were found in the territorial forest on land rather than what are found in the marine. So all these so many coastal villages, for them, the marine bioresources are more important than the what is found on the land. So there is a need to revise it, and unless and until it is digitized and the resources are uh, digitally available. Uh, see, if some cultivation of medicinal plant is happening in some BMC area, how and there is a certain quantity which is available, how will the industry know that this particular resource is available in a particular village? So it is necessary that these are documented and it is electronically available. See, just a simple example, when you go and book the ticket through IRCT website for the train reservation, when you do, you know how many seats are available, and accordingly anybody can book it online. So when the resources are reflected on the system, the industry can apply directly to the BMCs, and of course then the process of consent is also gets in. Right now the system, even for the new act says that within 15 days, if the BMC consent is not, or the SBB consent is not received, it is treated as granted. So most of the time NBA writes to State Biodiversity Board to get the consent through BMCs, but the 15 days period just lapses, and it is treated as granted. So once this portal is completely functional, so directly these applications can be transferred to the BMCs, and BMCs will be able to actively participate in granting the consent. So overall, I think lot of scope is there to improve our system. I think we have already have experience about more than 2 decades in implementing the act, but it's a long way to go before the communities actually start benefiting. So one example I will give of from Maharashtra, where one village in called Dapur, the BMC of Dapur, they got 67 lakh rupees from 2 kg of soil. 2 किलो मिट्टी गांव से एक कंपनी ने प्रोक्योर किया था, जिससे उसने माइक्रोब यूज करके दे यूज इट फॉर कमर्शियल प्रोडक्शन, and 67 lakh was transferred to that BMC. So when we really start knowing our biological resources and and controlling it for the excess wherever it is being done for commercial purposes. I think there are many villages where we have transferred as good as 47 lakh, 35 lakhs to one BMC. So I think there will be much more example when the BMCs get strengthened, their capacity is built, so that they know the benefits which they can derive. And our speaker from Gadchiroli, she spoke about FRA. Now, at a village level, there are so many committees. There is one joint forest management committee. In some villages, you have eco development committee. You have forest right committees under FRA. You also have PESA committee. When it is the scheduled area, you have PESA committee. And then you have BMC. So there are so many committees in a village. All these have to function in tandem with each other, so that the overall the community gets the benefit. And I think we can take more specific questions which you said through email. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. We have a couple of more questions. We will take the questions and have responses from the panelists through email. We will be recording and uploading this recorded session in Kalpavir's official YouTube channel. As mentioned earlier, this is first webinar of a webinar series on implementation of GBF in India. So please stay tuned for the upcoming planned webinars. Please register for the other webinars. And thank you, panelists, for taking out time and joining us and giving us a really fruitful session. There's so much to learn, so much to do in this front. And it looks like a lot of us are on common understanding about how to conserve the biological diversity. And now, because it's a whole of society approach that is promoted and by the countries, I think we all have a role in doing so. So thank you. Have a good day. Thank you, participants. Also, we will take all the questions to the panelists and get back with the responses. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.